The phone rang, slicing through the stillness of my small apartment like a knife. I stared at the screen, the name James glowing back at me. My younger brother was calling to invite me to his wedding, a whimsical celebration of love that, for some reason, felt less like a joyous occasion and more like a daunting trial. As I accepted the call, my heart began to race, and the memories flooded in, uninvited. "Clara, I'm so excited. You'll come, right?" His voice was bright, almost too bright, and I could hear the happiness radiating through the phone. But beneath that cheerfulness, I felt an undercurrent of dread. Wedding gatherings always reminded me of family dynamics I had long struggled to navigate, especially the tightrope walk imposed by my mother. A familiar knot twisted in my stomach. Any family occasion meant scrutiny, judgments draped in well-meaning words that cut deeper than I wanted to admit. "Of course I'll be there," I replied, my voice lacking the enthusiasm I tried to muster. As the conversation continued, I found myself drifting. Memories of family gatherings rushed to the forefront of my mind, those hot summer days where I would sit amidst the laughter and joy, somehow feeling like a ghost haunting the periphery, invisible and unworthy. My mother's voice came back to me, laced with sharp critiques that echoed painfully. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" It was as if her words were solid chains, binding me to a life of never quite measuring up. After the call ended, I sat down on my work desk, hands trembling slightly as I opened my journal. The blank pages loomed in front of me, inviting yet intimidating. My thoughts circled in confusion, the old patterns of anxiety knitting themselves back together. I could almost feel the weight of my mother's expectations pressing down on me, as if she were physically present in the room, ready to pounce on every perceived flaw and weakness. In the midst of this turmoil, a phrase floated into my mind, one I had seen scrawled in bold letters on a window of a beautiful secondhand bookstore just days before. The pain I inherited was not my path, but my awakening. I had dismissed it then, but now those words echoed more like a mantra. They whispered the possibility of a different way to perceive my history, not as a curse, but as a potential catalyst for growth. As I stared at the journal's empty page, I felt a flicker of resolve igniting within me. I decided then and there that I would not suppress my feelings. I would face them. In that moment of clarity, I committed to reflecting, understanding the source of my pain instead of allowing it to govern my actions. I wanted to know my shadows before they further obscured my path. Perhaps attending James's wedding could be an opportunity, not just to celebrate his love, but to examine my own. It could be a chance to step into the light of self-awareness and growth. I imagined a future where I could embrace my insecurities and flaws, no longer defined by my mother's critiques, but by my own emerging identity. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply to steady my racing heart, ready to embark on this journey of introspection and healing. Every family gathers around the table to share meals and stories. But for me, those gatherings often transformed into stages where my wounds were laid bare. I felt the weight of those memories as I closed my journal, still burdened by the history they carried. My mind drifted back to a summer evening, warm and golden, with the scent of lilacs wafting through our open kitchen windows. I sat at the long wooden table, surrounded by my family. My plate was filled with my mother's lovingly prepared pasta, meant to be a source of comfort. Yet, as my siblings laughed and shared stories, I sensed a dark cloud patiently hovering above me. When my mother's voice broke through the laughter, "Why can't you be more like your sister? She's going to Harvard, Clara. What are you doing with your life?" That tension became electrifying. The air shifted and my heart sank as her words sliced through the ambiance, creating an emptiness I couldn't shake. Her statements didn't just puncture the moment. They burrowed deep into my soul, binding me to a painful narrative of inadequacy. Anna, my older sister, was the embodiment of perfection, glamorous, accomplished, and endlessly adored. My mother's disappointment transformed into a weight I carried, teaching me that love was contingent upon achievement. If I can win her approval, maybe I can finally measure up, I thought, yet no action ever seemed sufficient. Years later, at another gathering, I recalled that pervasive feeling of inadequacy during a Christmas dinner. Opening presents with anticipation should have been magical, but instead, as I revealed my gift, a book on self-care paired with a shimmering crystal I had dreamt of, the silence was deafening. My mother raised an eyebrow, her expression carved from stone as she declared, "Clara, is this really what you wanted? Your father and I thought you'd prefer something productive." There it was again, the weight of disappointment crashing down. The flicker of jubilation I felt extinguished, replaced by guilt that wrapped itself tightly around my heart. I understood immediately that I didn't belong in my skin. I was merely a puppet dancing on strings, and every time I attempted to express my true self, I was met with swift rebuke. I learned to wear a mask of compliance to ease the burden on my family, hiding my dreams and desires. I became the dutiful daughter, submissive to the narrative my mother expected of me. Over time, each family occasion etched rigid beliefs deep within my psyche. I am not enough. I am responsible for my mother's happiness. I need to please to be loved. Even as an adult, those beliefs smothered my identity. Each compliment from friends felt like an intrusion. Every critique ignited a white-hot flash of shame that left me dizzy. I had sacrificed my voice to become the version of myself I believed my family desired, a shadow, a ghost forever eluding the light of my own existence. Yet, amidst the emotional turmoil, a flicker of clarity emerged, illuminating the remnants of that curious, creative girl I once was. The child who dared to dream lived somewhere deep within me, waiting for a moment to breathe anew. I realized it was time to invite her back, to reclaim her essence buried beneath the weight of disappointment and regret. As I sat alone in my dimly lit room, the memories of my past washed over me like a tidal wave, filled with resentment, sadness, and an unrelenting yearning for connection. In that quiet moment, I recognized the truth. This inner child was not broken, but had been stifled. The more I fought against her existence, the more I felt like I was losing the battle for my own identity. Suddenly, I saw a vision of the girl I had hidden away, longing to be accepted for her authenticity. I had effectively trapped her, allowing my mother's judgments to flay my spirit. Each critique had pushed that little girl deeper into solitude, but it was time to rewrite this story. In a moment of painful clarity, I began to understand that my mother's criticisms were more a reflection of her struggles than a statement on my worth. Strangely, as liberating as this realization was, it also illuminated how deeply I had internalized the narrative she had constructed around me. Acknowledging my struggles meant I had to confront my history, rather than simply relive it. Healing would not come from pushing my pain away, but through accepting it and using it as a source of empowerment. The shadows of my past wouldn't dictate my future. I was prepared to cultivate new blooms from the roots of my hurt, planting seeds of self-worth in the soil of my experiences. In this determination, I made a quiet vow to myself. It was time to reclaim my voice, to let my inner child guide me toward authenticity. I would choose to embrace my flaws and insecurities, transforming my pain into purpose. This journey would not only be about healing my wounds, but also about discovering the clarity and strength that would finally allow me to step into my life fully, no longer obscured or wrapped in the expectations of others. I stumbled upon Jung's work in a quaint secondhand bookstore, a small refuge for my soul amidst chaos. While seeking comfort on a worn-out shelf, I discovered Carl Jung's Man and His Symbols. The title seemed to beckon me, whispering promises of understanding and insight. My heart raced as if I had unearthed a treasure trove of wisdom that could illuminate the shadows I had carried for far too long. Returning home, I opened the book, and Jung's words seeped into my consciousness like balm. Concepts like the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we often neglect, resonated deeply. It dawned on me. I had buried aspects of my identity under layers of shame, yet these pieces yearned for acknowledgement and love. Though apprehensive, I leaned into the idea of the inner child. I realized that this vulnerable part of me had been silenced and stifled, waiting for a moment to be invited back into the light. Jung's assertions about nurturing the inner child sparked a flicker of hope within me. Perhaps healing could begin by recognizing and embracing this neglected aspect of my identity. As I delved deeper into Jung's teachings, I gained clarity on my past and relationships, particularly with my mother. Suddenly, her criticisms transformed in my mind, not as declarations of my inadequacy, but as reflections of her own unresolved fears. This perspective brought a sense of liberation. My pain no longer felt solely personal, but part of a universal human lineage. Encouraged by these realizations, I picked up my journal again. Jung's teachings fueled my writing, allowing me to explore my thoughts and feelings with honesty. I found myself meditating on the concept: the past is not my prison. Embracing my shadow became an opportunity rather than a burden. It could guide me through the labyrinth of my psyche to rediscover my missing pieces. My therapy sessions intertwined seamlessly with Jungian philosophy. Each week, I confronted forgotten emotions and chronicled my experiences on the page. I began to piece together my fragmented identity, acknowledging fears I had labeled as wrong or weak. Instead of avoiding uncomfortable feelings, I learned to engage with them. The journey was painful yet transformative, an active exploration requiring courage. One influential session stands out among the rest. Under my therapist's guidance, I envisioned my inner child. Imagine her sitting beside you, my therapist suggested. What does she need? What does she want to hear? In that moment of vulnerability, I visualized my young self, eyes filled with hope, longing to be seen and accepted. And there it was, the clarity that she yearned for: my compassion, understanding, and love. With each interaction, I realized that healing was not merely about addressing my pain, but also reclaiming the narrative once dictated by external expectations. I began retraining my thoughts, replacing "I am not enough" with affirmations like "I am worthy of love exactly as I am." A quiet strength emerged, fortifying me as I confronted the emotional landscapes haunting my past. The pain I inherited was not my path, but my awakening, I told myself, adopting these words as a mantra that resonated with the very essence of my transformation. Jung's wisdom guided me, illuminating my journey through a clearer lens. The shadows of my history were no longer a burden, but a source of empowerment that nurtured my growth. In this spirit of exploration, I felt an endurance blossom within me, one that further illuminated the path forward. With every turn, I learned that self-discovery was a process defined by acceptance and empathy, allowing me to embrace every aspect of who I was, both light and dark. The call to heal became not just a whisper, but a thunderous desire to uncover the fullness of my authentic self. As I ventured deeper into my psyche, laying the groundwork for a journey steeped in growth and self-acceptance, I began to understand that my past, however painful, served as an essential part of my story. This evolving narrative wasn't merely about surviving the stagnation of my childhood, but about flourishing, wielding the power to shape my fate and experience profound transformation. With renewed clarity, I dove deeply into my emotional labyrinth, intent on uncovering the shadows that had haunted me for too long. The journey into the psyche is rarely straightforward. It winds through grief, resentment, and buried memories. Still, I felt resolute, ready to confront the parts of myself that I had hidden away for far too long. Every morning, I awoke with a fresh sense of purpose. My journal transformed into my closest confidant, a sacred space for unfiltered thoughts and breakthroughs. I revisited the painful memories that shaped my relationship with my mother, allowing them to unwind in rich detail. I wrote about those summer days under her critical scrutiny. Each, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" reverberating painfully in my mind. With every stroke of my pen, I released the pent-up emotions that had festered inside me for so long. As I delved into these recollections, I began connecting the dots. Those hurtful words morphed into something much bigger, a complex I had unknowingly embraced. According to Jung, this emotional entanglement had turned me into the family scapegoat, burdened with feelings of inadequacy and unwarranted guilt. I felt an overwhelming drive to voice these feelings, to articulate the truths that had been festering. During my therapy sessions, I wanted to give shape to my experiences. I feel like I'm carrying this immense weight, I said, my voice quivering. It's as if I'm always in the background, unable to step into the light. My therapist encouraged me to express how the criticisms impacted me. What if you could acknowledge little Clara, the girl who needed to be seen and loved? She prompted. Closing my eyes, I envisioned her, so full of hope and imagination, physically vibrant, yet slowly fading into shadows each time a critical word pierced the air. This realization cut through me. I understood then that my sense of unworthiness stemmed not from personal flaws, but from years of external judgment. It was a painful, yet liberating moment. Following that epiphany, I devoted myself to healing. I began writing letters to my younger self, pouring out apologies for neglecting her needs. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you, I inscribed, for every time I listened to your mother's words instead of your heart. With each letter, I felt bricks fall away from the wall I had built to shield her, a wall that also suffocated my authentic self. Through consistent reflection, an unexpected strength began to emerge. I developed the ability to differentiate my identity from my mother's expectations. I am not just defined by her voice, I affirmed. I am made of my experiences, dreams, flaws, and all. I focused on Jung's concept of individuation, recognizing that healing required integrating the disparate aspects of myself. In this work, I discovered an exhilarating flicker of empowerment, one that compelled me to reconcile the lost fragments of my identity. As I wrote in my journal, I envisioned a liberated future. I asked, what will true acceptance look like? I painted dreams of empowerment, pursuing creative passions without fear, asserting myself in family conversations, and allowing my authentic voice to shine brightly. I dared to imagine who I could become when no longer confined by the shadows of my past. In one particularly impactful session, my therapist urged me to confront these shadows directly. What if you had a candid conversation with your mother? She suggested. The idea sent dread creeping into my chest. I envisioned her typical dismissal, the way she might wave away my feelings as inconsequential. Yet within me thrummed a desire for that confrontation, a yearning for validation. I wanted to be heard, no longer silenced in the shadows. Preparing myself for this eventual interaction, I began to rehearse what I would say. Mom, when you compare me to Anna, it hurts deeply. I practiced aloud, breathing life into my words. I feel invisible and inadequate. Each rehearsal soothed my frazzled nerves. I began to sense the burden of self-doubt loosening its grip on my heart, replaced by a quiet resolve. Leading up to James's wedding, I found myself with a lot to ponder. Interactions with my family were filled with tension, but as I approached these gatherings, I felt compelled to speak up. Sitting at our family dinner table, I fidgeted with my fork, observing my siblings and anticipating their reactions. They seemed entirely unaware of the complexities that loomed over our familial dynamics. As laughter filled the room, I grasped my opportunity to initiate the conversation. Can we talk about how we communicate? I ventured. The room fell silent. Attention shifted toward me, and I felt the weight of their collective gazes. My mother's protective demeanor shifted instantly, brows knitted in confusion and defensiveness. Yet, in the depths of my being, I recognized something transformative happening. My willingness to share my feelings represented a shift. I could articulate my need for change without falling back into the role of the invisible daughter. Overcoming the fear that had so long kept me restrained, I began the work of emotional liberation. This meeting converged my newfound understanding and courage to confront my past. Embracing my authenticity amid discomfort felt like both a rebellion and a homecoming, creating a space where I could share my full self without the shadows clouding my expression. It became clear that healing wouldn't simply arrive from avoidance, but rather through confronting these complex layers with honesty and compassion. With every word spoken, I redefined my narrative, stepping firmly into the light of who I was meant to be. I had begun the work toward individuation and was ready to foster growth beyond the shadows that had lingered so long. The journey toward full acceptance would require time, care, and courage. but I felt as though I was finally learning to emerge, not just to survive my past, but to flourish in light and love, reclaiming my authentic self one step at a time. As the wedding day approached, a mixture of excitement and trepidation filled me. I had spent weeks contemplating not only the celebration of my brother's love, but also how I could navigate the intricate dynamics of my family without losing myself in the process. In the days leading up to the event, I engaged in deep self-reflection, preparing myself for the conversations I felt compelled to initiate. The morning of the wedding arrived, bright and buzzing with energy. I stood before the mirror, adjusting my hair and dress, feeling both a sense of anticipation and palpable anxiety. The dress felt like armor, beautiful yet heavy, a symbol of the new me I was trying to embrace. Behind the fabric lay the weight of transformation. It reminded me of the emotional layers I had uncovered and integrated over the past several weeks. I was ready to face my family as my authentic self, not as the invisible daughter they had always known. The ceremony was filled with laughter, joy, and happy tears as James and his partner exchanged vows under a shimmering archway adorned with twinkling lights and vibrant flowers. The beauty of the moment pulled me in, momentarily distracting me from the weight of the impending conversations. I watched James, standing proudly, and let the warmth of his happiness wash over me. In that moment, I made a vow. I would honor his special day by truly showing up, by being present in my truth. After the ceremony, I felt the energy of the reception shift as the music played and laughter echoed through the hall. Families mingled, and I watched joyfully as my relatives mingled. Yet beneath the joy, I sensed my anxious anticipation. I had resolved to speak my truth, but the thought of how it would be received churned in my stomach. I had rehearsed my conversations countless times, but nothing could prepare me for the real thing. As tables filled, I settled into a seat surrounded by my family. Small talk floated through the air while I fidgeted with my napkin, my hands sweaty and uncertain. Gradually, I caught snippets of conversations revolving around small achievements, successes, and the familiar warm banter. Yet, lurking beneath, I could feel the expectations tightening like a noose around my neck. The feeling was stifling, but I took a deep breath, reminding myself of the work I had done, the courage I had cultivated. It was time to break free from the well-worn pattern of silence that had long surrounded our family gatherings. When my mother leaned over to comment on my hair, her tone veiled with critique, I felt the familiar urge to recoil. I swiftly shifted my gaze, planting my feet firmly on the ground. "Mom, can we talk?" I said, pushing the words out with surprising strength. The room's laughter dimmed slightly as heads turned toward us, a palpable tension settling in the air. My mother looked confused, perhaps even surprised. "About what, dear?" Her tone, though still threaded with concern, took on a defensive edge. This was one of those moments I had envisioned. Her usual barriers were already up, but this time I was resolutely prepared to dismantle them. I focused on maintaining my composure, gathering my courage. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about our family dynamics and how we communicate. I feel it's important for us to share our feelings honestly with each other," I started, my voice steady. It felt liberating to voice my truth, to speak from a place of authenticity rather than fear. When I hear comparisons to Anna or references about what I should be doing, it really hurts. I want to feel like I'm enough just as I am. The silence hung heavy in the air, an uncomfortable pause that stretched longer than I anticipated. I glanced around at my siblings, both expressions filled with uncertainty. Perhaps they didn't know how to respond, or they were equally caught off guard. My heart raced as I awaited my mother's reply, unsure if she would meet me with understanding or defensiveness. Finally, my mother spoke. "Clara, I never meant to hurt you. I only want what's best for you, to keep you motivated," she replied, yet there was a hint of irritation in her voice. It struck me that her intentions were buried beneath layers of misunderstanding. I took a deep breath, refusing to let the moment slip away into the fog of silence that had characterized so many conversations before. "Mom, I appreciate that you care, but it's hard for me to hear those comparisons. I need you to know I'm working on my own path. I want to define my success on my own terms, I said, my voice steady yet soft, as I focused on cultivating compassion rather than anger. I was no longer the passive participant in our family narrative. I was actively rewriting it. My mother's expression shifted, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of something almost raw and vulnerable. I guess I never looked at it that way, she admitted, the defense in her stance softening. It was a small victory, a moment of connection that hinted at the possibility of deeper understanding. Can we try to celebrate each other more, for who we are, instead of focusing on who we should be? I asked. In that moment, I realized how far I had come. I was asking not just for acceptance, but urging us all to unearth our authenticity beneath the layers of expectation. The conversation shifted once again, the tone of the room altering as my siblings joined in. I understand what you mean, Clara, Anna finally said, sounding tentative but sincere. We always felt the need to be perfect, to compete. I never realized how that affected you. Gradually, each of my family members began to share their own stories, shedding light on the struggles they faced in trying to fit into a mold that our family dynamics imposed. In that moment, the walls that divided us began to dissolve. Together, we spun a new narrative defined by empathy, honesty, and acceptance. As the night continued, I felt a weight lifting from my heart. I was stepping into the light, not just for myself, but for my family as well. The dance floor beckoned, and as I moved to the music, the joyous celebration created a vibrant tapestry worthy of our distinct stories. I felt more connected than ever, not only to my family, but also to my authentic self. This was a turning point, an integration of my journey through the shadows and the reclamation of my voice. I was no longer simply surviving within the confines of expectation. I was flourishing, ready to embrace the fullness of my identity. I understood now that authenticity was not just a gift to myself. It was an invitation for my family to join in that journey, reflecting the growth of a love that could transcend even the heaviest of shadows. In the days following the wedding, I felt a mix of exhilaration and determination. The connections formed during that evening ignited a commitment within me to carry forth the newfound honesty and understanding into my daily life. My journey toward authenticity had begun, and now it was time to nurture those relationships I had started to rebuild with my family. I vowed to continue the open discussions that had blossomed at the wedding. I decided to actively engage with my family, reinforcing our conversations about authenticity and support. One sunny afternoon, I invited my mother for tea, a gesture aimed at deepening our reconnection. As we sat down with cups in hand, I sensed a familiar tension lingering, but it also felt charged with potential. "Mom," I began, choosing my words carefully, "I want to talk about how we communicate. I think we need to give each other space to express our feelings without fear of judgment." Her face turned thoughtful. "What do you mean?" she asked, brows furrowing for a moment. I took a deep breath, recognizing that this was a chance to further explore the themes we'd touched upon at the wedding. "When I hear comparisons to Anna or comments about what I should achieve, it hurts," I explained. "I just want to feel accepted for who I am, not for the person you expect me to be." Her expression shifted. I could see that familiar defensiveness bubbling beneath the surface, but as I continued, I noticed it softening. "I never intended to hurt you, Clara," she replied, a hint of regret in her tone. "I only wanted what was best." It was a small but meaningful step. Her willingness to acknowledge her emotions opened the door to deeper understanding. The more I spoke, the more I could sense her opening up, sharing her own pressures and worries. As the weeks rolled on, I made it a point to maintain this openness. I immersed myself in painting again, reconnecting with a passion that had long lain dormant. My art became not just a creative outlet, but a cathartic release, a way to capture the transformation I was experiencing. Each brush stroke represented my journey towards healing, and I found that creating art allowed me to explore emotions that still lingered just beneath the surface. Feeling inspired, I invited my family over for an art showcase to share this part of my life with them. These pieces reflect my feelings and, experiences, I explained, excitement mixing with apprehension. They tell my story of transformation. As they examined each painting, I held my breath, waiting for their feedback. Anna stepped forward first, her eyes lighting up. "This is beautiful, Clara. I had no idea how deep your emotions ran." The warmth in her voice reassured me, grounding my experience in a shared understanding. My mother nodded, visibly moved as if each piece resonated with her understanding of our evolving relationship. Sharing my art felt liberating. I no longer felt like the hidden family scapegoat. I was claiming my identity and inviting my family to acknowledge it alongside me. More than just displaying my work, I was asserting that my voice mattered, that my feelings, once stifled, deserved light. Continuing this practice of honesty, I engaged my family in other settings. Whenever old patterns began to emerge, snippets of comparison or pressure, I gently redirected conversations. "Can we focus on our passions instead of measuring ourselves against one another?" I would ask, recognizing the importance of actively fostering an atmosphere of understanding. As I focused on creating and nurturing these new conversations, it became evident that healing was not merely about avoiding difficult topics, but about engaging with them genuinely. The emotional liberation I experienced demanded active participation, and that meant confronting discomfort with love. Then came our annual family picnic, a tradition often fraught with unspoken expectations. I approached this year's gathering intent on establishing a celebratory atmosphere. There was a nervous excitement coursing through me as I mentally prepared for the event. I had cultivated a new sense of freedom, and I was determined to put it into action. Arriving at the picnic, I took a moment to absorb the scene around me. Families mingled, children laughed, and the sun cast a warm glow on our familiar setting. Instead of feeling anxious, I felt empowered. This was the time to celebrate what we had been building as a family. As I gathered everyone around a picnic table, the moment felt ripe for shared appreciation. "Let's take a moment to share what we value about each other," I suggested, heart racing. Although it caught them by surprise, gradually, everyone began participating. Words of kindness and admiration flowed, anecdotes highlighting each person's uniqueness and contributions. When it was my turn, I looked around, soaking in their faces filled with warmth and hope. "Thank you for being here today, for showing up as your authentic selves. I want us to celebrate not just our successes, but each other's individuality," I said, feeling the depth of my appreciation cascading into the open air. Laughter erupted, and a wave of warmth encircled our picnic gathering. The conversations marked an important shift. They were rooted in compassion and acceptance, rather than criticism and comparison. As we moved through the afternoon, the picnic transformed into an opportunity for bonding, a shared experience of deepening trust and understanding. Honesty flowed like the warm breeze, scattering any remnants of anxiety as we laughed, celebrated, and uncovered our stories. I felt lighter, more connected not just to my family but to my authentic self. This was no longer just about overcoming the past. It was about weaving a new narrative together, enriched by the complexities of each member's journey. I embraced my growth with gratitude, realizing that the journey toward authenticity would continue unfolding alongside my family. As the day came to a close, I recognized that I was now living fully in my truth. The work had blossomed into liberation, allowing me to shine in the brilliance of love, acceptance, and authenticity. I understood now that my journey was not solely my own. It extended into the metaphorical tapestry we were weaving together, a partnership of mutual growth and understanding that I cherished deeply. As summer shifted into autumn, I took time to reflect on the profound transformation that had unfolded in my life and within my family. The picnic we shared marked a turning point, establishing a new narrative rooted in love, compassion, and acceptance. It was clear that we were no longer bound by the shadows of our past. We were weaving a fresh legacy, together. Since that day, I embraced my authenticity more fully than ever. I felt empowered to express my thoughts and emotions, engaging with my family in ways that inspired deeper connections. The emotional breakthroughs we shared became the foundation for a healthier dynamic, allowing us to understand each other without judgment. I consistently sought opportunities to foster connection. One chilly afternoon, I invited my mother for a warm cup of tea, wanting to deepen our dialogue. As we settled in, I felt a mix of hope and apprehension, but I knew I was ready to explore our relationship further. "Mom, can we talk about how we communicate moving forward?" I asked, my heart racing. I needed to articulate my desire for an environment where I could express my true self without fear of comparison. "I think we can do better at supporting each other," I continued. To my relief, she nodded thoughtfully. "I never intended to hurt you. I only wanted what was best," she replied, vulnerable and honest. This exchange felt monumental, a step toward a more open and trusting relationship. In the following weeks, I channeled my feelings into art once again. Painting became a powerful outlet for my emotions, each creation telling a unique story of growth and transformation. I organized a small art exhibit at home to share my journey with my family. Each piece reflects my experiences and feelings, I explained to them as they entered the room, their eyes lighting up with curiosity. As they engaged with my artwork, I saw hints of understanding and pride unfold. Anna lingered on one painting, vibrant with colors, and exclaimed, "Clara, this is stunning. You've captured so much emotion." With this encouragement, I felt a deeper bond forming. My journey was no longer solitary. It became clear how art could bridge gaps between us, fostering appreciation and dialogue. I invited my family to share their own stories, encouraging them to express their emotions openly. Then came our annual family picnic, an event that had often carried the weight of unspoken tension. This year, I felt an incredible sense of anticipation. Armed with the lessons learned over the months, I was determined to make it a day of love and connection. I suggested we take a moment to express what we valued about each other. "Let's share our strengths and what we appreciate," I proposed as we settled at the picnic table, heart racing at the thought. Although surprised, they embraced the idea, gradually unraveling layers of appreciation. As I shared my gratitude for each family member's uniqueness, I could feel warmth enveloping us, a collective acknowledgement of our individual journeys. With laughter echoing around us, the space transformed into one of openness and acceptance. I felt lighter and more connected, not just to my family, but to my authentic self. This day wasn't merely a celebration. It represented a shift toward a new narrative defined by compassion rather than competition. We were learning to thrive, celebrating our individuality while nurturing the ties that bound us. As the day came to a close, I realized I was living fully in my truth. The hard work of vulnerability had blossomed into liberation. I understood now that my journey was not solitary. It extended into the tapestry we were weaving together, one enriched by love, understanding, and shared growth. The legacy we began to establish felt powerful, offering a foundation upon which we could always return. Each encounter, each heartfelt conversation became a thread in our ongoing story, illustrating our collective commitment to flourish. In this new environment, I felt ready to embrace the future, confident that the bonds we had forged would carry us forward, anchoring us in a legacy of healing that honored who we were meant to be.